Ever wondered what it's really like to fly a helicopter at night? It's far more than just day flying in the dark. It's actually an entirely different discipline,
Mhm.
a place where your most reliable sense, your vision, well, it can actually betray you. Today we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating world of helicopter night operations. Our main source for this is a pretty essential reading for pilots, a section from the Helicopter Flying Handbook, Chapter 12, Night Operations. This is an official FAA document, and it lays out incredible detail on what pilots absolutely need to know. So our mission for you today is to really unpack the unique visual challenges pilots face after dark, how the human eye behaves differently, and the specific strategies, equipment, and meticulous precautions they use to stay safe and navigate the unseen.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable, isn't it? How critical vision is for a pilot. Yet at night, this fundamental sense, it becomes surprisingly misleading. We'll explore exactly why that happens and, probably more importantly, how pilots compensate. And this raises a really important question. What hidden challenges, what surprises lurk in the dark for even the most experienced aviator?
Okay, so let's start with this core idea. Pilots rely on vision more than any other sense, that's clear. But at night, this primary sense can become a source of potential incidents. Why is that exactly?
Well, there's sort of two broad categories of factors at play here. First, you've got physical limitations. Things like fatigue or, even what a pilot eats or drinks can subtly degrade night vision. But maybe even more profoundly, there are visual cue deficiencies. Basically, at night, your ability to see clearly, your dark adaptation, how you see color, your depth perception, it's all significantly limited.
Right. And it's not just that things get blurry. Your unaided eye literally has degraded visual acuity at night. It's like, imagine suddenly needing a new prescription for your glasses just because the sun went down. Your perfect 20/20 daytime vision, it's just not the same after dark.
Exactly. And when you dive into those specific visual changes, you find things like night myopia. See, at night, blue wavelengths of light tend to dominate. And even pilots with perfect daytime vision can experience decreased sharpness. This happens partly because your pupil gets wider in low light, and your eye's natural focus can shift to a resting point. Makes you more nearsighted, basically. It's called dark focus. And interestingly, you can sometimes get special corrective lenses for it. And beyond that, other things, age-related conditions, can subtly impact night vision too. Things like recovering from glare or processing information quickly.
Okay, so it's really clear. Our eyes don't just see less at night. They actively change how they perceive the world. It's a fundamental shift, sometimes for the worse, regardless of how perfect your daytime vision might be.
Definitely. And to really get that shift, it helps to quickly understand how your eye works. It's a lot like a camera, really. Light comes in through the cornean lens, focuses on the retina at the back, and the retina, it's packed with millions of light-sensitive receptors. We call them rods and cones. Let's look closer at these rods and cones. Your cones are packed together right at the center of your retina, in the fovea. There would give you bright light vision and color perception sensing red, blue, green light. That's why you look directly at something to see fine detail during the day. Makes sense. But here's the key. Cones don't function well in darkness. At all. Which explains why your color vision pretty much disappears at night. Then you have the rods. These are concentrated outside the center, more in the periphery. They are your specialists for dim light and night vision. But they only see in black and white. Rods are also responsible for most of your peripheral vision, and they're incredibly sensitive to motion detection. Seeing something move out of the corner of your eye, that's your rods kicking in.
Ah, okay. And here's where it gets really impactful, right? At night, the cones kind of check out, while the rods become way more receptive. So essentially, your eye sacrifices sharpness for sensitivity. Is that fair to say? Which means your ability to see things directly in front of you is reduced, you lose depth perception, judgment of size. And get this, because the center of your vision relies on those daylight-loving cones, it actually creates a night blind spot right in the middle of your vision. So how well you see at night is mostly down to your rods and how much light your pupils let in.
That's pretty much it. And beyond just the rods and cones, several other factors can really impact night vision. Your diet and general physical health play a role. Deficiencies in certain vitamins, like A and C, can reduce night acuity. External factors are also huge. Things like carbon monoxide exposure, smoking, alcohol, certain drugs. They can all depress night vision. And crucially, lack of oxygen. This is a big one. The eye needs a lot of oxygen, more per unit weight than almost any other part of the body. So less oxygen means poorer night vision.
Okay, wow. So if our eyes are inherently limited, even misleading sometimes, how do pilots actually compensate for all this? It sounds like it must be all about meticulous technique and serious discipline.
That's exactly right. It starts with something called light discipline. Think about driving down a dark country road. If your dashboard lights are blazing, it's harder to see outside,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
It's the same principle in a cockpit. Pilots keep their cockpit and instrument lights as dim as possible, really low. The dimmer the inside lighting, the better they can see outside. It lets their eyes adapt to the ambient light out there and helps them pick out crucial details like unmarked hazards or potential landing sites without lights. Then there are specialized night scanning techniques. These are vital for avoiding collisions. Good night vision is essential, obviously. Night scanning, like day scanning, uses a series of short, regularly spaced eye movements. But here's the crucial difference: off-center viewing. Unlike daytime, pilots intentionally use their peripheral vision where those sensitive rods are concentrated to spot objects. They look just slightly above, below, or to either side where they think something is, holding each point for only a couple of seconds. You see, you can't stare directly at a dim object for too long at night. Your retina gets used to the light level, and the image can actually start to fade. Yeah, so small circular eye movements help keep it visible by constantly stimulating new areas of the retina. Also, pilots move their eyes more slowly from one sector to the next than during the day, just to prevent blurring. And for terrain scanning, the approach is a bit different again. During the day, you can see distant objects clearly. At night, your range is limited and detail is poor. So pilots scan effectively by sweeping their eyes side to side. They usually start scanning at the furthest point they can perceive something, maybe high on the horizon, then gradually bring their gaze inward toward the aircraft. And because the rods don't perceive moving images very well, a deliberate stop-look shift stop-look technique is used. It's not a smooth sweep.
Okay, a methodical process.
Very. For each stop, they scan a fairly wide area, maybe 30 degrees, but no single stop lasts more than 2 or 3 seconds. And when shifting their view, they deliberately overlap the previous area by about 10 degrees, just to make sure nothing gets missed in the periphery. And then there's obstruction detection. This is a tough one. Things like wires, small tree limbs, they have poor reflective surfaces, making them incredibly hard to spot at night. Often, the best strategy for locating wires is actually to look for their support structures, the poles or towers.
Look for the bigger thing holding them up.
Exactly. Pilots also diligently review the most current hazard maps before any night flight, checking for known wire locations and other obstacles.
So what does this all boil down to? It means pilots aren't just, casually glancing out the window at night. They're actively using these specialized visual tactics, basically working around the limitations of human sight in low light. It's quite something.
Absolutely. And beyond these visual techniques, specific aircraft lighting requirements are critical, and they're mandated by regulations. 14 CFR Part 91 to be precise. All aircraft flying at night must have position lights: green on the right, red on the left, and a white light on the tail. Standard stuff. Additionally, anti-collision lights, those flashing red or white strobes or beacons, are also required if the aircraft has them and they're working. These are really crucial for helping other aircraft spot you in the dark.
Right. So how do these lights actually help with collision avoidance? How does that work?
It's actually a pretty clever system. By looking at the position lights on another aircraft, a pilot can quickly figure out its direction. For instance, if you see a red position light to the right of a green light, that aircraft is flying directly towards you.
Okay, red on the right, coming at you.
Exactly. You watch that aircraft very closely. Get ready to maneuver. There's a mnemonic pilots use: red on right, returning. Conversely, if you see only a white position light, that aircraft is flying away from you. You're looking at its tail light. It's so vital for pilots to consciously make time for scanning for other aircraft at night. It takes real effort. Because there are so few outside visual references, it's easy to just focus on one point, maybe an instrument, and become less aware of traffic.
Tunnel vision, almost.
Kinda, yeah. So make a special effort to scan. Effective scanning uses those short, regular eye movements we talked about. But when scanning specifically for other aircraft, each eye movement should be smaller, maybe covering only 10 degrees at a time. And each area needs to be observed for at least 1 full second to actually enable detection. It takes that long for the eye to pick up a dim light. And if a pilot does spot a dimly lit object, they shouldn't look directly at it. Remember that off-center viewing.
Use the peripheral vision again.
Right. Scan the area next to it. This stops you from fixating on the light itself and helps you see the actual the aircraft, the tower, whatever it is. Short stops, just a few seconds in each scan area, are key for detecting the light and noticing any movement. And one more thing. Pilots must also remember to move their heads, not just their eyes. Ground obstructions can easily hide a large patch of sky, and a small head movement can make all the difference.
But even with perfect technique, perfect lighting, the brain can still play tricks, right? Illusions must be a huge factor, giving false impressions of what's really going on. Sounds especially dangerous at night, leading to disorientation.
Oh, absolutely. Illusions are a major, major threat at night. You've got the relative motion illusion, for example.
Right.
It's where you falsely perceive your own motion because something
No.
else is moving. Like you're stopped at a light, the car next to you creeps forward, and for a split second, you feel like you're rolling backward.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Well, imagine that feeling during formation flight, or hovering low over water or tall grass. Very disorienting. Another big one is confusion with ground lights. Pilots can easily mistake isolated ground lights for stars. If they do that, and maybe align the helicopter with a line of street lights thinking it's the horizon, they can get into a dangerous false nose-high attitude. Or, imagine flying on a really dark, overcast night with no stars. Unlit terrain can just blend seamlessly with the dark sky. A pilot might mistake a dark shoreline for the actual horizon and try to fly under it, thinking they're nose high when they're actually descending towards the water.
Yikes. How do they combat that?
The critical defense is always referencing the flight instruments to establish the true horizon and aircraft attitude. Trust the gauges over your potentially confused senses. Then there's the reversible perspective illusion. This one's tricky. At night, an aircraft that's actually approaching you might appear to be moving away, especially if it's on a somewhat parallel course. It's incredibly dangerous if both pilots make the same wrong assumption. The key again is observing those position lights red on right, returning.
Always back to the lights.
Pretty much. And finally, there's flicker vertigo. Not technically an illusion, more a physiological effect. Viewing a flickering light, maybe rotor blades interrupting sunlight or flashing anti-collision lights, especially in clouds, can be super distracting, annoying, even disorienting. At certain frequencies, these flickering lights can even, in rare cases, induce seizures in susceptible people.
Wow. So how can pilots possibly trust their senses when they know their senses can so easily lie to them? It sounds like a constant internal battle every time they fly at night. And it seems like managing all this starts way before they even get in the air. That pre-flight preparation must be intense for night ops.
Oh, absolutely critical. The aircraft pre-flight inspection needs to be meticulous. Ideally, pilots try to do it during daylight hours. That gives time for maintenance if something's found. If a night pre-flight is the only option, a flashlight with a bright, white, unfiltered lens is essential. You just can't see things like oil or hydraulic fluid leaks properly with a red or blue-green light. Windscreens need to be spotless. Even tiny scratches that you wouldn't notice during the day can cause major glare at night. And they'll carefully position the search or landing light beforehand, thinking about the best angle for illumination during a potential emergency descent. The electrical system gets extra scrutiny too. If the helicopter uses fuses, carrying a spare set is required by regulation, and it's just smart. If it has circuit breakers, they check carefully that none are tripped. A tripped breaker signals a potential malfunction needing maintenance. Then there's cockpit familiarity and lighting. This is huge. Pilots need to know that cockpit inside and out, be able to find every switch, every control, every instrument, both with and without cabin lights on. Practice it.
Muscle memory.
Exactly. Because some markings can be really hard to read in the dark. All interior lights, especially instrument panel lights, are checked. As it gets darker outside, the cockpit lights are dimmed way down, matching the ambient light as closely as possible to reduce glare. A flashlight, maybe with a red or blue-green filter, or a map light, can be used for specific tasks, like checking a chart. Always carry a spare flashlight. And crucially, pilots brief their passengers on light discipline. No sudden phone screens or bright lights that could blind the pilot and destroy their night adaptation.
Right, so it's not just about what the pilot sees, but controlling the entire light environment inside and outside, and even managing passengers. That level of planning is really something else.
Okay, so once they're actually airborne, how do the techniques continue to adapt for different phases of flight?
Right, it changes constantly. For engine starting and rotor engagement, you need extra caution, especially in dark, unlit areas. Besides the usual clear call, pilots turn on the position and anti-collision lights right away. Sometimes they'll even flick the landing light on momentarily just as an extra warning to anyone nearby. When it comes to taxi technique, remember those landing lights cast a pretty narrow beam forward? Side illumination isn't great, so pilots taxi much slower at night, especially around ramps and parking areas where unexpected obstacles might be. And if they're at an unfamiliar airport, asking ground control for specific instructions or advice about local conditions is really important. You don't want to taxi into unlit construction. For night traffic patterns, the minimum recommended altitude is generally higher, maybe 1,000 feet above the ground when possible. Pilots will almost always plan to use the lit runway for unaided approaches and departures. Make sense?
Yeah, use the lights you have.
Exactly. And they often try to avoid downwind or crosswind approaches if they can, just because the visual cues are so reduced. Now, takeoff. Before lifting off, pilots double-check for a clear, unobstructed takeoff path. They pick a reference point down that path for direction and position the landing light to illuminate the tallest obstacles they might encounter. During a night takeoff, especially from smaller airports or remote sites, those outside visual references just disappear almost instantly after liftoff.
Into the black hole.
Pretty much. So to compensate, pilots rely heavily on their flight instruments, altimeter, airspeed, attitude indicator right from the start. That first 500 feet of altitude after takeoff is considered the most critical period. It's a huge transition from a lit area into potential darkness. Often, a night takeoff becomes what we call an altitude over airspeed maneuver, meaning the priority is gaining height quickly for obstacle clearance, maybe sacrificing a little forward speed initially. During en route procedures, flying at a cruising altitude somewhat higher than normal is generally recommended. It provides a bigger safety margin.
Why is that?
Well, three main reasons. One, more clearance over obstacles you might not see, like power lines or unlit towers. Two, if the engine fails, you have more altitude, which means more time to set up for a landing and a greater gliding distance to reach a safe spot. And three, higher altitude generally means better radio reception for navigation and communication. Also, during pre-flight planning, pilots try to pick a route that keeps them within reach of an airport or another safe landing site. Flying close to a populated or lighted area, like a highway or town, is also smart. It offers more options in an emergency and helps with navigation. And if a forced landing does happen at night, same basic procedure as daytime, but definitely turn on the landing light during the final descent to spot obstacles just before touchdown. Finally, approach and landing. Night approaches have some, maybe surprising advantages. The air is often smoother, less turbulence, but there are special considerations. When landing at night, especially somewhere unfamiliar, pilots aim for a lighted runway and then use taxiways carefully to avoid unlit stuff. Now, studies show pilots have a tendency to fly lower approaches at night than during the day.
Lower. That seems counterintuitive.
It is, and it's dangerous because it increases the risk of hitting something like a wire or a fence. So good practice is actually to make steeper approaches at night to increase obstacle clearance. Constantly monitoring the altimeter is key. Another common tendency is focusing too much on the landing spot and letting airspeed decay. Big no-no. Pilots have to maintain the proper attitude and keep some forward airspeed until very close to the ground, checking the airspeed indicator constantly because outside cues might be useless, and that landing light. While helpful, it has a downside. The brightly lit spot can seem higher than the dark surroundings. This can trick a pilot into flaring or stopping the descent too high, potentially leading to a hard landing or worse.
Wow, this sounds incredibly complex. It's just fascinating how many subtle factors, visual tricks, and psychological tendencies can throw a pilot off, even with all these established procedures.
Exactly. And those subtle factors feed directly into various illusions, leading to landing errors. Different surface features, atmospheric conditions, they can all create false impressions of your height and distance during a night landing. The way pilots prevent these is by anticipating them, doing an aerial visual inspection of unfamiliar airports before landing if possible, and using things like electronic glide slopes or visual approach slope indicators, VSIs, when available. Take the featureless terrain illusion. If you're landing over dark water or maybe snow-covered ground with no texture, it can make you feel like you're higher than you actually are. So you fly lower. Precisely. You fly a lower approach without realizing it, increasing risk. Then you have atmospheric illusions. Rain on the windscreen can make you feel higher. Haze can make the runway seem further away. Both might lead to flying a higher approach. Penetrating fog can create a sudden illusion of pitching up, causing a pilot to steepen the approach abruptly. And ground lighting illusions are common too. Mistaking street lights or even a moving train's lights for runway lights. Or very bright runway lights might seem closer than they are, tricking a pilot into flying an approach that's actually lower than the proper glide slope. Conversely, flying over very dark terrain with few lights can make you feel higher, again potentially leading to a lower than normal approach. All of this really brings us to a crucial concept: night VFR, seeing conditions. It's not just about ceiling and visibility in miles. The quality and amount of light available profoundly affects safety. Seeing condition basically refers to your ability to actually discern unlit or low-contrast objects and terrain features at night. It depends on the amount of natural light, moon, stars, and man-made light available. and also the contrast, reflectivity, and texture of the ground itself. To operate safely, pilots must account for these seeing conditions. We talk about highlighting conditions. This exists when you have, say, less than broken cloud cover. It's between moonrise and moonset, and the moon is at least half full. That's one way. Or it exists if the aircraft is flying over significant surface lighting that eliminates obstacles, helps identify terrain features like shorelines or hills, and gives a clear horizontal reference. This surface lighting could be from a big city, or maybe the reflection of city lights off clouds, or even limited man-made lights combined with highly reflective terrain, like snow under starlight.
Okay, so highlighting isn't just bright moonlight.
Not necessarily. Then you have low lighting conditions, which are basically everything else, conditions that don't meet those highlighting requirements. Think about it. A dark forest with few lights usually needs significant moonlight to be highlighting. But cover that same forest in snow. Its reflectivity might make it highlighting even with just starlight. A desert might be naturally reflective enough to be highlighting most of the time, unless clouds block the starlight. But large areas of open water, they might never have enough reflectivity or cultural lighting to qualify as a highlighting area.
That really drives home the point that night isn't just one single condition, is it? It's a whole spectrum. And pilots have to constantly assess where they are on that spectrum and adjust everything accordingly.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And, through experience flying in a specific area at night, pilots develop this ability, this intuition almost, to judge whether an area typically offers high or low lighting conditions before they even take off. But without that specific local experience, the safest bet is always to assume low lighting conditions apply for planning and flying, unless you can clearly see and confirm that high lighting conditions exist and will persist. Even if the helicopter is certified for night VFR, flight should only happen if adequate celestial illumination is really assured for the entire duration of the flight. Safety first.
So after all this, what does it really mean for you, our listener, whether you're a pilot yourself or just, someone looking up at the night sky?
Well, what's truly remarkable here, I think, isn't just that our eyes can trick us, but how systematically pilots have learned to, almost re-engineer how they perceive the world at night. They actively counteract their own senses using technology, technique, and incredible discipline. It's a profound testament to human ingenuity and the power of rigorous training.
Yeah, we've really unpacked a lot today. Everything from how your eye physically changes in the dark, to these intricate off-center scanning techniques, to navigating really complex visual illusions that mess with your brain. The next time you're flying at night, maybe as a passenger, or even just driving down a dark country road, you'll probably have a whole new appreciation for how your own vision is adapting second by second, and just how easily it can be fooled by the lack of light. And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with. Given how profoundly our vision changes at night, and how pilots have to systematically account for every little detail, how might our everyday assumptions about what we see or think we see in low light affect other critical activities in our lives, things completely unrelated to flying? What other unconscious visual habits or biases might create blind spots for us, metaphorically speaking? This deep dive really shows us, I think, that being truly well-informed means digging into the nuances of even seemingly simple things, like just seeing in the dark.